In my childhood, I remember a teacher who didn't just teach me math or reading. She taught me to believe in myself. On the days I wanted to give up, she reminded me that my voice mattered. And even now, years later, I can still hear her encouragement echoing in my heart. That's the kind of lasting impact teachers have. But here's the reality: our schools need more of these incredible educators. They need more people willing to step into the classroom and change lives, not just for today, but for generations to come. Today, I am joined by Kenneth L. Johnson Jr., a leader deeply committed to recruiting and supporting passionate educators. Together, we will talk about the urgent need for teachers, the process of becoming one, and why this career is not just a profession, but a calling fueled by passion and purpose. Welcome to the show, Ken. How are you today?
I am well. Thank you so much for asking. How are you?
Pretty good. I'm just glad that you are here helping us kick off season 9, episode 99. Thank you.
Look, you are very welcome. There's got to be a significant reason for those 2 9. So we'll figure that out and
Yes.
we'll figure out how to package it on the show.
Well, thank you. So tell me a little bit about yourself and what do you do?
Wow. Well, I am in the business of supporting and developing educators.
Mm-hmm.
I'm the director of the human resources for the Richmond County School System in Augusta, Georgia. And in that role, I'm responsible for all things human resources, functions, benefits. But where my passion is really recruiting, developing, and retaining our 4,538 employees. So
Wow.
that's where I earn my bread and butter so far, and really thinking through about how I do that process by creating the conditions where great people want to come, where they want to grow, where they want to stay, and then supporting principals and directors in being able to do the same for our school system.
Mm-hmm. So this is going to be great for the conversation we're having today because you're an expert, right?
Well, I don't know about an expert. I tell you, I'm a lifelong learner, and I take good notes along the way.
Yeah, that's good. So let's get into the conversation. Let's start off with the heart of the
Okay.
issue. Why is
Okay.
teacher recruitment and retention such an urgent need in our schools right now?
Wow. Well, probably it's no surprise to you being in the field, no surprise to your listeners. There's a national teaching shortage.
Mm-hmm.
There aren't enough educators that are coming out of traditional teacher education programs. And you know that when there's a shortage in the realm of quality teachers, it affects class sizes, it affects what types of programs you can offer, and ultimately the experience that kids end up having in the classroom.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and knowing that the challenges are what they are now, I won't get too much into, what the landscape is specifically here in Augusta. But in every context, there's a landscape that impacts how difficult or the challenges or barriers that exist to finding good teachers. And when those challenges exist and there aren't really creative ways to figure out how to maneuver them, some things that end up popping up are burnout,
Yeah.
pay gaps, increased workload, and that's just on teachers. Not to mention what that looks like for principals as they're maneuvering, trying to serve and lead in buildings, where there might be an overrepresentation of teachers that don't have the experience and the expertise. And then there's a trickle up effect, if you will, that ends up hitting, my office with my colleagues, where we're having to think very creatively about
Mm-hmm.
how we identify really quality teachers. And then in the absence of that quality, how do we go about selecting the right folks that we can really grow and develop? So, we in Richmond County, we really lean towards this idea of how do we develop the talent that we do have,
Mm-hmm.
or develop the talent of the folks that have the skills, the traits, the characteristics that we know are really important for educators to be successful in the classroom, knowing that the end goal is making sure that every child has access to a high quality, caring educator, whether they're a non-traditional educator who's figuring it out along the way, or whether it's an educator who's gone through a really rigorous teacher education program and they're ready to start really effective teaching on day one.
Yeah. And we're going to get into some of the creative ways that school districts are recruiting. I would love to hear what you guys are doing, and I can share some things that I've seen within my own school district, Gwinnett County Public School. So, but before we do that, let's talk about, the calling. For many teachers,
Mhm.
teaching is more than a job, it is a calling. How would you describe the kind of person who thrives in this profession, and why should someone consider becoming a teacher?
That's a great question. And I love how you
Hmm.
frame that, Francesca.
Hmm.
As a third generation educator, and coming from a long line of preachers, preachers and
Yes.
teachers. So this literally, it educates. I tell folks it really is a calling.
Yeah.
So about the folks who would make the best candidates, independent of whether or not they have the traditional training. I'm thinking about, is this person someone who's driven by purpose? That really speaks to the calling piece.
Hmm.
You heard me shoot down this idea that I'm an expert.
Yeah.
And I think I counted with I'm a lifelong learner, and I'm someone
Yes.
who's very reflective, right? So
Hmm.
are you purpose driven? Is there a bigger reason for your opt in to this profession? Are you someone
Hmm.
who's willing to think about your practice to reflect on the connection between what you did in the classroom, either in your planning, in your teaching, and your reflecting upon your practice, and how you are willing to shift, the next time that you have a chance to plan or to instruct. And then you, in this field, you better have tough skin. You better be resilient, because they're going to be, tough days. And sometimes
Yeah.
those tough days are, strung together. So those are the three big things that always you kind of pop up for me. It's got to mean something to you,
Hmm.
and it has to mean something independent of what kind of day you had. Unfortunately, because if not, one might find themselves basing whether or not they want to come back the next day on whether or not the day that they were in was a great day. So lifelong learners obviously do really, really well in this
Yeah.
field. People who are willing to reinvent themselves, and who are really willing to think about the shifting needs of students. Once you hit one generation of students and you see the trends come in, whether that's curriculum, or us calling the same thing that we did 10 years ago a different name, or whether that means seeing students adapt and shift what works. But you absolutely better be purpose driven, reflective, and resilient along the way, if you want to have a rewarding career in this field.
And that is so true. A true story for me that I would love to share. I I consider myself, this is a calling for me. I started teaching when I was 13 years old. My parents left me in charge of my little brother and sister over the summer. And so I would wake up and get their lesson plans together,
Wow.
and had to, like you said, tough skin. I had to deal with them because they thought I was ruining their summer, making them sit
Hmm.
down and read and write. But then as I got older, I went on to college. I tried to avoid teaching and
Yep.
went to business school
Hmm.
and actually worked in business, but teaching was just calling me. And I ended up back,
Francesca.
yes, come.
Francesca.
So I've been in it now for 20 some years, and
Wow.
no regrets. Love it for sure.
Wow.
So the process, there are people who are listening who might feel inspired, but they're just
Mhm.
unsure where to begin. Can you walk us through the process of becoming a teacher and what support systems are in place to guide them?
Right, right. That's a great question. I'm about to go into my recruiting bag. here.
Okay.
But so there are two significant routes, or two main routes for aspiring educators to become educators. The traditional route that I referenced earlier
Mm-hmm.
goes through university, obviously through a traditional teacher education program. And we define a traditional teacher education program as the experience that a person has, similar to my experience, where you go off to school. Maybe you don't fight the call like I did and like you did, and you opt into, an education major once you get there. But nonetheless, you go to education or to college, and you declare an education major. And if you're attending any of the USG, University System of Georgia institutions, of course, that process is pretty scripted. Identifying a major, going through the process of doing an internship, your practicum hours, I should say, as well as student teaching. And then, of course, graduating, having passed your certification exams to be a fully certified teacher. And again, that's defined as having gone through a teacher education program as an education major and having completed the certification requirements tied to your participation in that education major.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there's a much wider route into education that is becoming um, increasingly more popular, just because there's so many students who are choosing to not go the traditional education route.
Okay.
So that's an alternative route. And I've challenged some of my colleagues, myself included, to kind of shift away from this idea of referring it to it as non-traditional, and
Mm-hmm.
instead just an alternative route. We can get to the same destination. It's just going to look a little bit differently, and we're going to take a
Yeah.
different route to get there. But the alternative route towards becoming a teacher does involve having a 4-year degree. So there needs to be a degree in a field. And then there is enrollment in a certification program. Those certification programs could look like an MAT at an approved um, graduate program in a traditional in a traditional college setting. I know in our area, there are a couple of universities that are responsible for helping produce a significant number of educators that come to education the alternative route.
Mm-hmm.
Outside of the university route for the alternative certification is the Georgia TAP program. Georgia TAP is a route, teacher alternative pathway preparation program, and it provides learners a little bit more of a flexible route, if you will, in partnership with our RESAs, which are our regional educational regional educational agencies. The RESA here in this area is the CSRA RESA, but they provide certification and training that becomes a 2-for-1, all-in-one route, if you will, for prospective educators to get the certification. So these two tracks, they have their different pros, they have their different cons. But if the end goal is certification, there is the option to get your certification, obviously the traditional route, or you can go the alternative route through a university or Georgia TAP program through one of our RESAs.
Okay, so let me get this right. Oh, this is the scenario. I
Mm-hmm,
just graduated from college. I got a degree
mm-hmm,
in journalism. I've been looking for a job in journalism, and unfortunately, nobody's hiring journalists right now. And so I'm
mm-hmm,
like, well, maybe let me think about this teaching thing, right? And so,
mm-hmm,
what would I be teaching if I went that route, to the
mm-hmm,
alternative route with a 4-year degree in journalism?
mm-hmm. Right, right. So if you reached out and called me, I'm going to
Mm-hmm.
engage you in that litmus test to make sure you have that purpose driven, you're reflective, you're resilient on the front end.
Gotcha.
Because unfortunately, Francesca, I do see and do have conversations with some people who unfortunately choose education as a backup option.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll tell you, these are the folks whose positions I'm ending up filling after a quarter of the school year. Okay.
Yes.
But assuming that this person, checks those boxes and they're a person who seems like they would be a really good fit, I would have a conversation, with this person about what makes the most sense, their financial implications for different routes. Perhaps there is a timeline that might be really prevalent, or maybe there's a number salary wise that the person is trying to hit, right?
Mm-hmm.
Knowing that our first step is certification, the alternative route is probably the best option because the person didn't go through a traditional
Yeah.
teacher education program. Okay. If a
Mm-hmm.
person is really driven by the prospects, Francesca, being able to make master's degree money almost immediately, I might
Mm-hmm.
route that person to a university based program through an MAT.
Okay.
Because once having completed that program, the person will have the certification and they would see an immediate pay bump once they complete that program to be able to earn T5 money. And the
Mm-hmm.
five is the equivalent of master's degree money. Okay.
Yes.
Let's say a person might be thinking about taking a little bit slower route. They might not qualify for financial aid, or they might look for something that's a little bit more flexible and not as fixed. I might route them, Francesca, to a Georgia TAP option
Mm-hmm.
that's a little bit more flexible, um, that might provide a little bit more white glove service, if you
Yeah.
will, just depending on the the RISA and the instructors in that particular program. And let's say this person might not have an intention on doing this long term. I might route them through the
Mm-hmm.
Georgia TAP option because once that person has done that 12 to 18 months of graduate level coursework, they'll have their certification. But with their certification, they would only be earning T4 money. And remember, the five is a master's degree, the four is a bachelor's
Mm-hmm.
degree. So they would go through the process of completing the work and they would be earning bachelor's degree pay, but they would be fully certified. Again,
Yeah.
both paths lead to certification. One path leads to a little bit more pay and might be a little bit longer and require some more specifics. Another route might be a little bit shorter and might not be as demanding as the other. And again, these are very, very broad generalizations. And I would
Yes.
encourage this person to do their due diligence, get to know the program that they're interested in pursuing for the alternative route.
Yes, and the information is out there. I've talked to a few people who, and thank you for keeping it real.
Hmm.
For just saying it should not be your backup plan because you're dealing with children, and
That's right.
there's something to that, and you've got to be able to handle that. And so I
Hmm.
love that you were keeping it real. And so one of the things that I noticed with some of my young folks that come in to teaching, some of them come in through just being substitutes and standing
Hmm.
out long-term subs and standing out in that aspect and like, okay, I actually do like this.
Yep.
And then they go into the alternative route as well. So
Right.
the information is out there. You just like you said, do your research and you will
Hmm.
definitely find out which way is right for you. For me, I did
Hmm.
the MAT program as well. I just wanted to go ahead and get it out the way, get my
That's right.
master's with certification, and I love that I did that.
That's it.
Yeah. So recruiting teachers is important, but keeping them is equally important. What
Mhm.
strategies or supports are being used to make sure educators feel valued, supported, and motivated to stay in the classroom?
Right. I think this might be the best question that I hadn't heard the next question,
Yeah.
but this is a really good question,
Uh-huh.
Francesca, and I think it's probably the most important question. Unfortunately, sometimes in K-12, my colleagues don't fully realize nor recognize that if we can keep the educators that we do have, we won't have to go out and do any recruiting, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I try to beat the bushes of, hey, what are we doing to make sure that we are retaining the folks that we do have?
Yeah.
And going into year 2 now in this role that I'm in, what I've learned, which has been, staring me in the face of the whole time, is the the best retention efforts really are the best supporting and developing efforts. In fact, I've
Mm-hmm.
challenged my team, Francesca, to not even use the term retention. Like, what
Mm.
does that mean, right?
Yeah.
So we don't use the R word. Instead, we're
Okay.
using the S&D words. How are we supporting the people that we do have? How are we developing people that we have? And then right smack dab in the middle of the S and the D is we choose to make sure that we're recognizing our employees while we're supporting and developing them. So that's been a pretty radical shift for us. If not careful, systems and my colleagues might find themselves just filling positions, filling positions, filling positions. But often, sometimes we can stop the bleeding, Francesca, if we invest in the leaders and K-12. That's principals. Those are folks at the director level who are supporting, um, central office level staff members. What are we
Mm-hmm.
doing directly as a human resources team to support, recognize, and develop our people, right? And
Mm-hmm.
knowing that my office in 864 Broad Street is not in a building, it's not in a school. So unfortunately, I don't get to directly touch employees for the day-to-day support, recognition, and development. And then
Mm-hmm.
in the instances where I can't do it directly, I do have an obligation and a responsibility to do so in how I support and how I provide resources to my principals and directors who create the conditions in the buildings, in the departments that they're serving. So what does that
Mm-hmm.
look like? That might look like me as a system level leader advocating from the support lens, making sure that I'm collaborating very closely with my colleagues in teaching and learning and professional learning to make sure that
Mm-hmm.
their induction programming, to make sure that they're really effective professional learning communities, that they're affinity spaces that provide community that's safe and it's comfortable for all employees, maybe in their specific groups, to be able to get what it is that they need. On the recognition side, that might look like me advocating, hey, it's October and it's Principals Appreciation Month. And based on the things that I'm seeing in my role, my principal colleagues are going through some things right now. What
Mm-hmm.
can we do to make sure that they feel appreciated, that they
Yeah.
feel seen, that they know that they aren't here, that they aren't out here doing the work by themselves, right?
Yes.
And then even outside of just the month of October, what do regular recognitions look like for all employee segments?
Mm-hmm.
I love teachers. I love administrators. But in my system, there's about 55% of the workforce who aren't teachers and administrators. What are we
Mm-hmm.
doing to make sure that we support
Them.
those individuals, our
Yeah.
paraprofessionals, our custodians, our facilities and maintenance, and the list goes on. And probably the most important piece for supporting, if we're thinking about supporting and developing employees as the best retention effort, is what does talent and development look like in our school system? And
Mm-hmm.
not from the lens of we want to make sure everyone can be a director or administrator, but what does it look like to make sure that there are pathways for folks to be able to get better, whatever that looks like for them, whether that means I want to be better in my role as a classroom teacher and I want to retire as a teacher, but I want to make sure that there are opportunities for me to develop my practice, and maybe even to
Love it.
display leadership from my lens as a classroom teacher, right? Or what
Hmm.
does that look like from the lens of, an upstart who's moving and shaking, and they recognize that they have influence in the school with their colleagues, and they are pursuing administration, possibly as a goal, and so forth
Hmm.
and so on. So, ideally, there are pathways um, that allow our employees to progress in the field, um, or at absolute least to be able to develop and to get better, whether they choose to progress into a different role or to stay in the role that they're currently serving in as their ministry or their calling, as you referred to it a little bit earlier.
Yeah. Wow. You are doing some amazing things. Your district, the people who support you. I just love this. You guys have that foundation where people feel valued, heard, and supported. And like you said, we're not going to say the R word, but you keep your people that way because people they just
Yeah,
want to feel heard. They want to feel valued. So I
yeah,
love that you're doing those things.
yeah. And let
So
me
to
tell you this,
close it
Francesca,
out, go
and
ahead.
we haven't.
Go
Just one
ahead.
more thing, Francesca. We haven't all the way figured it out. We haven't all the way figured it out,
Yeah.
but we're getting
Yeah.
closer. And something that jumped out at me,
Hmm.
our team reviewed all of our exit survey data for every
Hmm.
employee that separated from us this year.
Hmm.
And guess what factor was not a contributing factor for why they separated?
What?
It was not pay.
Oh wow.
Our people told us that they understood what they opted into, right?
Hmm.
There are challenges that we have in our communities and our schools that people opt into. Again, that
Yeah.
speaks to the call, and that speaks to, being purpose driven. Um,
Hmm.
they chose us. They chose
Yeah.
RCSS. So it's just a really, really good reminder for us to really be in tune with our employees and to make sure they have what it is that they need, because support and development is going to look different based on what the employee needs. The same way we expect teachers and to differentiate their instruction for their students, the same way we
Hmm.
expect administrators to vary their support for the teachers in their buildings. I believe our school systems also have to be in tune with what our employees need and to provide that if we expect to keep them.
Great points. Great points. And we don't know who's going to be listening to this, but hopefully, if it's teachers and district leaders, they take away some of the things that you have said and create space for that.
Mhm.
Because, like you said, we need teachers. We
We
definitely
do.
need teachers. So, finally, if someone is listening today and they have ever thought they had a moment, they want to become a teacher, what would you say to them? Why should they say yes?
Wow. So what I would say, Francesca, and this is from my lens. I've served as an elementary school principal. Before the elementary school principal, I worked in the high school as a teacher and administrator as assistant principal. And I tell you, education is one of the few careers that allows one to see their impact daily and
Hmm.
to literally shape generations, especially if your entry point is through elementary school. You literally see these little people um, grow and develop day to day, week to week, month to month. And if you choose to opt in at the high school level, you might not always get a chance to see um, that sapling, that seedling break the ground per se. But
Hmm.
when you put that seed in the ground, there are opportunities, 4, 5, 6 years down the line where you have those chance encounters where you see those young people who are now adults that can
Yeah.
reflect and think about and speak to a conversation that you had 10 years ago. I'm coming on 20 years in the field now, Francesca,
Hmm.
and it never fails. I always see these grown-ups now with the
Mm-hmm.
faces of who they were when they were my children, if you will, in the
Yeah.
classroom. But
Yeah.
you literally get a chance to see your impact either real time or know that you're putting that seed in the ground and it's going to shape a generation. I would say if you ever, felt the tug, teaching, to teach, now is the time. The need is probably as great as it has ever been.
Mm-hmm.
And if one is purpose driven, the reward is unmatched. I don't know what else
Yeah.
a person could opt into, that provides the things that education provides. And this is a field, as I've referenced, I'm not perfect. I'm someone who's learning. My team and I are learning and growing. It's a practice. And you
Mm-hmm.
don't need to be perfect to be able to show up and to bring value. But what we do need to do, something that needs to be present, is presence. You have to
Yeah.
show up.
Yeah.
This is something that requires our students require of us to be full time committed to the work. Of course, take care of yourself. Of course, make sure that you're at your best, but be present. Be a person who's really open to learning and growing,
Yeah.
learning oneself, learning the community that they're serving, learning alongside the people who are doing the work, and learning the work. And being committed to making a difference, knowing that actions have consequences, and if and when a person is efficacious, they recognize the power that their
Mm-hmm.
actions have.
That's
Because
true.
teaching is something that offers community, purpose, and legacy, whether we want to lean into that or not. So I would encourage the
Yes.
person to say yes if they answer yes to any of those questions. And then, Francesca, I
Absolutely.
would say, please check our website,
Yes.
www.rcvoe.org/careers, or you can drop me a message. I'm on the website
Absolutely.
prominently to learn about opportunities in the Richmond County School System, or I could route you to some colleagues
Yes.
near a school system near you.
Yes. And I'm going to make sure I have all of your information in the show notes. This is a great conversation. I'm glad we started season 9 with this. So I really do appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Francesca. I appreciate the invitation and best wishes to you. You're doing terrific work. Keep going,
Oh,
keep
thank
making an
you.
impact.
Thank you. So, as you just
You're
heard,
welcome.
teaching isn't simply a career, it's an opportunity to shape the future one student at a time. Our schools don't just need teachers, they need leaders, encouragers, and world changers. If you have ever felt the pull towards education, now is the time to step forward. The process is here, the support is ready. You heard it first from Mr. Kenneth Johnson. The impact you can make is immeasurable. Join us in this amazing industry and let's build a future together, starting in the classroom. Thank you so much, Mr. Johnson, for sharing with us today.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Everything But the Lesson Plan. If today's conversation inspired you, make sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. This podcast is all about helping teachers not just survive, but truly thrive in the classroom and beyond. Until next time, keep teaching with a passion and keep thriving.